everyone. Hope everyone's doing okay today. I'm doing good. Just ready to go to see family for Christmas. I have my ugly sweater on in honor of Christmas. It's a bunch of little cats. It says Meowie Christmas. I don't know, I thought it was cute. So yeah, I have subjected to you Roman's Christmas today. I don't know much about this game. I do know the Game Grumps played this on their channel a few days ago. And I haven't watched it because I plan on playing this. Kitty sweater is not ugly. Aww. That's true, they are very cute. It's kitty explosion. It's full of Christmas spirit, that's what this sweater is. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Get started. Playing Anzoc's loot. Okay. The snow had stopped. A lonely lupine detective slowly pushed his way against the snow. It was a familiar pathway he followed, his footsteps heavy on the snow-buried stone pavement as he approached his destination. Day 1, 23rd of December, 1285. It's 2 days until Christmas, and 2 days until the end of my fast. As nice as it is to feast on Christmas, I can't stomach a month-long fast. A whole month without any meat would certainly turn any wolf into a hare. Oh yeah, and this place is full of a bunch of anthropomorphic animals, I believe. Next time, I'm not fasting for a month just to solve a case. Lucky for me, I closed my last case before it ruined my vacation at the White Star Tavern. I'm not going to let another case interrupt my vacation. Not even a murder. I pulled my fur coat tighter and continued to walk against the cold wind towards the distant tavern. I finally saw the sign of the White Star just as the warm breath coming out of me began to froze against my snout. Okay, there's probably going to be some English mistakes. I wonder why the tavern keeper won't move to a better spot. If it weren't for their excellent cider, a tavern this far from downtown wouldn't last a year. Achievement unlocked. Welcome. The door's hinges creaked as I pushed it open. The warm scent of fireplace smoke, cooking bacon, and wheat bread encircled me. Several oil-painted portraits of white-furred dragons decorated the walls, each one exquisitely painted. Since when do dragons have fur? Maybe they meant scaled? Yeah, I mean scaled. Haven't seen you for a while. What would you like to have today? Tarzan was dusting one of his precious portraits when I entered the tavern. He paused just long enough to speak, then continued his work. Why does an azure-scaled dragon like him love white-furred dragons so much? Maybe I'll never know. Same as usual, but my fast doesn't break until the day after tomorrow. Got it. Tarzan put down the duster, then wiped his hands with a cloth at the counter before grabbing a beer mug and making his way towards the cellar. I hung my coat on the hat stand and sat beside the fireplace to warm myself up. What a coincidence to meet you here. What about buying me a drink to celebrate this moment? Anzox must have heard me come in and rose up from the corner to approach me, bringing his lute with him. He's a bard, but one without a patron to support his artistic career. Character info added. He's also something of a detective fanatic, though I doubt if he has the necessary talents to actually be one. Nowadays he travels between taverns to sing for his supper, all while hoping to find some rich noble patron who will appreciate his talent and shower him with wealth. Oh, what a coincidence. I'm flattered that Roman, the great detective, still remembers me. I never forget a guy who can distract me every time when possible, not on purpose, but still impressive. Of course I do. You left such an impression on me last time when I was trying to solve that case and you... I'm really sorry about that, please no. Okay. Anzox fled, clutching his loot. Great, saved a pint for myself. It's almost dinner time, but there's no other customers here. Is it because of the heavy snow? Probably. I'm starting to feel thirsty after staying by the fireplace for too long. What's keeping Tarzan from bringing up the booze? As I looked around, I spotted a guy covered in a priestly robe and veil, wearing a silver cross and curled up at a corner table. It's a kitty! I can't make out his face in the candlelight. His mug of cider is still full and untouched. Who in the hell would? Is that a disguise? Hasn't he heard that saying about tigers changing their stripes? Tarzan came out from behind the counter and handed me a mug of cider along with a note. That's elegant. If you find out anything regarding her, keep it to yourself. Her? Whatever, I've seen stranger things. I shoved the note up my sleeve, drank a gulp of cider, and purposely let out a loud belch. I relaxed in my usual chair, enjoying myself in the quiet and familiar atmosphere of the White Star Tavern. Looks like we're the only people here tonight. The logs in the fireplace were making tiny crackling sounds. Not tiny, it's actually pretty loud in my ears. Tarzan sat behind the counter, reading the cookbook his father left him. Anzox was playing his lute. Elegant had gone upstairs a while ago. Maybe I'll live here after I retire if I have the money. Assuming the White Star keeps its comforting atmosphere till then. Come to think of it, what should I do to kill time before dinner is served? I brought a book called A Briefing History of Apulian with me to do some reading during my vacation. Although I don't really think this little book can tell me anything about my homeland I don't already know. I could also check out White Star's special Christmas menu. I can't have any meat for another 2 days, but a glimpse of a good menu and a little bit of imagination won't break the rules. Maybe I'll just take a nap. I could use a good nap after losing sleep for almost a month. What should I do before dinner? A Brief History of Apulian, look at the White Star's menu, or take a nap. I don't know. What do I do? Let's read. Might as well do some serious reading. I took out the book A Brief History of Apulian I borrowed from a crime scene from my bag. It's a cheap little book, printed with movable type printing and distributed among the citizens of Apulian. The king believes that if the citizenry know more about the country's history, they'll be more loyal. Thus he rewarded the minister who invented the printing technique and built 3 machines to print these things day and night. Although most of the books handed out in the slums end up being more useful for starting fires and quality toilet paper. I borrowed a book from a crime scene. I borrowed it. Although most of the books handed out in the slums end up being more useful for starting fires and quality toilet paper, still it's better than nothing. A Brief History of Apulian. Dedicated to the great Helios II, may God bless him and his subjects, and may the sun shine upon this glorious land forever. Apulian, the country we live in, was established by the father of Helios II, Helios I the Pioneer. On 4th of September 1169, a great earthquake endangered the reign of the ruling nobles. After the earthquake brought as God's punishment on the blasphemous nobility, God chose Helios I the Pioneer to execute his divine wrath. Helios I the Pioneer led his royal soldiers of various species from Rimph, our glorious capital, and created the country of Apollyon that we know now. Helios I noticed the strife and discrimination caused by age-old hatreds between species. Thus he decreed that all species in Apollyon would be equal. On 1st September 1230, Helios II ascended to the throne after Helios I's demise. Truly a blessed land of equality. Tarzan came out of the kitchen and brought me a plate of smoked herring and a pale ale. Oh, thanks. That's almost meat, huh? Pity I can't serve you clams in this cold weather. At least it's better than carrots. Fortunately, we still have some smoked herring. I'd have to serve you carrot stew otherwise. Bon appetit! He returned to the kitchen, then brought Anzox a bowl of lamb stew. I'm jealous! Elegant came downstairs, hesitated a moment, then took a seat at a corner table. She glanced at me, and I quickly looked elsewhere. Chapter 0, Christmas Carol. Sharpening knife. After dinner, I sank into a rocking chair near the fire and let myself relax. The logs in the fire, heavy with pine resin, crackled and popped as the chair slowly swung back and forth with a creaking noise. Not a whole lot of customers this month. Tarzan brought a chair and sat down next to me, gazing into the fireplace. Don't worry so much, just give it a couple of days and you'll have as many customers as you had in the years before. I get the feeling this year might be a little different. Can't really tell why, though. Perhaps the howling winds outside are keeping the customers away? Anzox heard our conversation and came to join us with his lute. As if something as minor as high winds could stop folk from having cravings for Tarzan's famous home cooking. Flatter me all you like, you're still not getting a discount. I was being sincere! Though I wouldn't mind a discount. The White Star has a variety of activities to entertain overnight guests and those who stick around after dinner. There's a darts competition Saturday evening. If all the players are friendly and there's no authorities around, Tarzan would cover some tables with blue flannel and take bets. I doubt anybody like that would be out in this weather. I elbowed Tarzan quietly and gave him a wink. Not tonight. He glanced toward Elegant before whispering to me with one hand hiding his mouth. After all, we don't know her that well. Let's hold off on the gambling for the time being. Well, if you think of something else, let me know. I'll see if I can keep myself occupied. What do you want to do tonight? Talk to Elegant, listen to music? I have no idea. Having no idea now. Alright. Let's talk to the cat. By the way, I don't know Elegant very well. I'll ask her quietly when Anzox won't notice. I walked towards the round table she was sitting at before pulling out a chair and taking a seat and offering my hand. Hello, I'm Roman. I waited for Elegant to reach out for a handshake, but it seems she didn't want to. My right hand hovered in the air as awkwardly as the silence. Hello. I apologize if I'm disturbing you. Having no idea now as opposed to having no idea later. This is true. I kind of secretly like games like with grammar mistakes. I find it so funny. Mainly like I've watched the Game Grumps, a couple of their videos have like visual novel games with bad grammar. One that's really bad, and it's hilarious. I was like dying laughing. I was about to push my chair away and end the embarrassing conversation before it started, but paused as she motioned for me to stay seated. She looked me up and down, slowly. I could almost feel the weight of those lake blue eyes through that thin veil. As a detective used to observing others, I know how uncomfortable it is to be examined so thoroughly by such a sharp and intense gaze. You are on good terms with the owner of this tavern, are you not? Well, you could say that, but how can you tell? The way you pass information is too obvious. I felt naked. It was like her eyes were peering through me and into my soul. Well, to be fair, isn't that what cats kind of do? You need not fret. I do not care about your business. I would imagine a detective like you has more than a few informants. I didn't notice until now that I was involuntarily biting my left thumb. It's a nervous tic I've had since I was young. I still haven't managed to break the habit. No need to be polite. Just tell me why you came to me. Well, if you insist. Relieved, I unclenched my fist and took out my handkerchief to wipe the sweat from the pads. Actually, I came here to ask. Your race, your cider, your gender? These are kind of rude. I'm gonna go with the safe option. Go with your cider. Not interested in actually drinking from your glass? I prefer to remain sober in case something unexpected happens. At this moment, Anzox suddenly came up. Still deep in conversation, are we? I thought you were talking about nothing, so I thought I'd join in. Trust me, we've got plenty to talk about. By the way, I've heard a puzzle in a tavern from another town. Would you be interested? Sorry, we're kind of in the middle of... What's the puzzle? Elegant seemed interested, taking her mug and sitting down with Anzox by the fire. Playing a puzzle game again, Anzox? Tarzan just finished cleaning the kitchen and came to sit by the fire. Yes, you came just in time. I'm not really in the mood. Hear a story or go to rest? I guess I'll listen. It's not like you've got anything better to do. You can just listen and let us solve the puzzle if you want. I'd better do it by myself than leaving it to you guys. Let's start, Anzox. Anzox cleared his throat, then caressed his lute and said, One night, in a small farming town famous for its barley, the only windmill in the town came to a stop. This was the first time it happened. Since the mill was so vital to their work, the villagers rushed out to check the mill. From afar, the villagers saw the windmill blades were no longer rotating. They thought that the sudden wind and snow had broken the transmission shaft that ran the mill. The villagers came to the mill, the ground covered in thick snow over their ankles. The dark wooden mill towered over them in the white expanse, the blades turned in an ominous position, looking like an inverted cross. I assumed this was a puzzle, not some bard tale you used to coax coins from drunkards. Elegant's tail swished as she impatiently drummed her fingers on the tabletop, while Saracen sat and listened attentively. It's not as though you're paying me, it's just sit and listen. Allow me to continue. As they drew closer, they found the windmill's maintenance gondola was tied with a hemp rope to secure it. Safety rope added to the clue. Please click the clue button to view specific evidence. Safety rope. Ordinary rope tying the miller to the maintenance basket. Okie dokie. But then they saw the miller who ran the mill was suspended upside down in the middle of the air. His eyes were wide open with fear, his face contorted as though he was screaming in terror. His paws were stiff and hanging down and level with the edge of the windmill blades. The snow from yesterday clung to his cold body. How ironic that the object used to ensure safety had become a lethal weapon. No one could imagine that. Lethal? Wait a second, Anzox. Did the safety rope really cause the death of the miller? Do you disagree, Roman? After all, the safety rope was tied to the miller's dead body. Yes, but why can't the safety rope be the murder weapon? Oh shit. Uh, Ankle? It can't be deadly if it's tied to the ankle. Is it like that sport from overseas? What do they call it? Bungee jumping? Correct. A safety rope is typically tied to the ankle or waist. Considering the position of the body, the only possible way was tied to the ankle. Ah, okay. That is indeed true, but there must be something that killed the miller. We can discuss that next. Go on then, Anzox. As I was saying, the miller had died in the windmill where he had spent his night and days. The local police initially determined that the old miller was trying to repair the windmill while he was drunk. He had slipped, lost his footing, and fallen from the repair gondola. However, the cause of death was still unclear, though his head might have struck the windmill. The townsfolk invited one of the greatest detectives in the realm to investigate the scene. He was an old-fashioned detective and refused until he was paid no less than 13 rayar and all travel expenses. 13 rayar? That's 910 set. I don't know what that means. For just one case, that detective could eat fried lamb chops every meal for a month if he hadn't vowed to fast until Christmas. I wish my cases paid that well. Perhaps you could charge more after your reasoning skills improve. Tarzan couldn't help but chuckle. At least let me have some dignity. When the townsfolk came to his humble residence, he was seated behind his great desk, playing with a prism he had bought from the capital's Grand Bazaar. Sunlight from the small window passed through the lens and scattered into a rainbow of color. After listening to the villager's account, the detective struggled to get up from his easy chair with a cane, then asked his only servant to call the carriage. This would be one of his few field investigations. One problem was that the description of the crime scene is not detailed enough to his liking. Another problem is that the case sounded so bizarre. And the biggest problem was that the glib bard could not get to the point. Then why don't you tell the story? The sudden interruption made Anzox blush with anger. It's fine, the details make the story more vivid, even if they are irrelevant. The day after the body was discovered, the detective arrived at the town in the afternoon. He learned from the gossip in the tavern that on the night of the miller's death, 2 people had spent the night in the mill, but they both had alibis. Who are they? One was the miller's daughter, the other was the miller's apprentice. They had spent the night in the mill as usual. About those 2 people, I'd like to know. What about the miller's apprentice? The apprentice's name was Hans. He came to the mill from the next town 8 years ago. At that time, he was just 10 years old and all alone in the world. No parent could be so cruel if it weren't because of money. Fortunately, the miller treated him well. The apprentice was also very clever. He always seemed to be able to succeed no matter how complicated the miller's orders. Miller's daughter? I want to know about the daughter of the miller. Elena, the miller's daughter. She's 16 years old and a gray wolf. She had no shortage of suitors in the town, and even caught the eye of a few local nobles. And not just because of her father's wealth, she was also renowned for her beauty. She had been the dream girl of every bachelor in the town since she was 14 years old. She had a good relationship with her father, or at least other outsiders thought so. Recently, there was a rumor that she had a close relationship with the miller's apprentice. Let me think. Ugh, there's only one option. Go on, please. I have to say those 2 caught my interest. Please go on. What about the miller's reputation? The miller had lived his entire life in the town and had no enemies. He was well regarded by the townsfolk. His wife died of puerperal fever shortly after she gave birth to Elena, and he had lived as an old bachelor ever since. He had several drinking friends who he'd met with in the pub almost every night after supper, drinking and talking until the tavern closed. Sounds like some of the tavern's regulars. Some folk at the tavern provided the detective with additional information. The miller had been extremely generous recently, and one day he even bought everyone in the tavern a round of ale in celebration. That's all the information on those present. Having gotten his full of gossip from the noisy drinkers in the tavern, the detective left the tavern and went walking towards the mill. Within 10 minutes, the detective arrived at the mill. It was a clear and windless morning. The snow at the gate of the mill hadn't been swept away by the overzealous villagers. The detective, relieved and cautious, checked the snow from the outside. The snow was unexpectedly clean. Apart from the footprints left by the villagers who found the corpse in the outer circle, and the footprints that went all the way in the front of the house, there was nothing except some messy traces in front of the last footprints. It seemed that there was no shortcut or alternate entrance. The detective put on his hat and came to the mill door. He glanced down by accident before entering the door. There seems to be a circular imprint around the last footprints in front of the door, and the stone used to hold the door open had also been moved. Stepping inside, the detective met Helena, who was covering her face and crying, and Hans, who was comforting her. The body of the old miller was still hanging on the windmill, swinging like a pendulum in the wind. Do you want to listen to their testimony first or go straight to the scene? I guess we should listen to everything, huh? Hear the testimony. Perhaps you should investigate the scene first in case something gets destroyed later, not to mention the witness does not seem to be emotionally stable. Are you new in this profession? How come I have to teach you? You don't have to be rude, ma'am. Maybe you should listen to her, even though she is a glare came through Elegant's veil should have set Anzox on fire, so he shut his mouth tactfully. The detective first went up the stairs to check the scene of the death. Anzox quickly sketched something on a piece of paper and handed it over. The mill is divided into 3 floors and is about as tall as 5 people. Between the maintenance gondola on the 3rd floor and the window on the 2nd floor is a connecting shaft between the fan blade and the mill. The maintenance gondola is extremely narrow and long, and about as wide as an adult's foot. There was a layer of snow on it, but no footprints. 2 ropes were tied at the railing of the basket. The left part was covered with snow, like the other parts of the railing, and there's no snow on the right part. The detective leaned against the railing and looked down. Under the wooden railing hung the cold body of the miller. The rope on the left has only a section of rope head swaying in the wind, like a peddler who dared not go home without a sail. As he tried to lean out further, the railing creaked under the pressure. The snow fell from the inclined railing, falling and disintegrated in the air. The detective's biological instincts kicked in, his fur bristling involuntarily. He pulled back quickly and turned to check the situation at the entrance, putting his right hand inside his coat and grasping the dagger he kept to defend himself from villains. It was a gift from his first love. Every time he held the dagger, it reminded the temperature of her palm on that fateful day. Okay. Are we listening to a love story or something? Please, one elegant is enough. The detective turned around and found nothing behind him. He went downstairs quietly and found that the 2 of them were where they were, as if they had not moved. He went back to the 2nd floor and looked up from the window. Above his head was the rotating shaft of the windmill blade, which gleamed black from grease from the daily rotation and maintenance. The shadow cast by the rotating axis hit the detective's face, which gave him a very uncomfortable feeling. As though he was some prehistoric hunter shuddering in terror at the sight of some giant beast. The gears of the windmill were exposed, about 30 centimeters away from the upper eaves of the windows. The triangular teeth were distributed around the rotating shaft. The detective put his hand into his coat pocket and gently ran his thumb across the edge of the prism he carried. Something came to his mind. The detective looked out of the window again. The lowest gear groove seemed to be more worn than the others. He went back to the first floor, passing by the living room and straight into the kitchen. The oven seemed to have been used recently, and the kitchen filled with a mixture of the pungent smell of charcoal and the delicious grain smell of barley bread. He opened the oven and flicked the ashes with a stick. The shape of a piece of charcoal under the ashes reminded him of the prism in his pocket, like a wedge. Having gathered the necessary evidence, the detective returned to the living room to question the witnesses. Noticing the detective's approach, Elena sat upright with Hans' support, her eyes drooping. She was dressed in a light blue nightdress. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her facial fur was combed, and it was easy to see the state of disorder despite her attempts to cover it. Anzox coughed a few times, and when he spoke again, it was in a higher, feminine voice. "Welcome, Mr. Detective. I assume this visit is related to my father's death?" "It'd be nice if you could talk this way more often. It's really hard to speak like this. Come on, show us your dedication to your craft." It took the detective about 10 minutes to persuade the apprentice to go upstairs with his servant, lest one of their testimonies influenced the other. After formally introducing himself and some brief preparation, the detective asked her to tell the story of that night. Testimony. The testimony of Elena the First. Yesterday after dinner, my father went to the tavern as usual. I finished my homework after about 8 o'clock. It was about 2 hours before my father came back. Nothing seemed strange. I then went up to Hans' room to chat with him. 2 hours passed by, and we didn't realize that my father had yet to return as normal. It wasn't until around 11 o'clock that we realized how late it really was. I hurried downstairs, thinking my father was quietly sitting in the living room, ready to scold me. But he wasn't there. The door was closed and no one was in the living room. I had a feeling that something terrible must have happened. It was like a snake had slithered under the door and crawled up my spine to whisper in my ear. I don't know if it was because of the wind or the old hinges, but the door that day was more difficult to open than usual. I pushed the door open and the wind blew the snow into the house. I propped the door open and made my way outside. When I got under the windmill, I had a strange thought, like an itch on my back that couldn't be scratched, and I couldn't help but look up. Hanging above my head was a purple face that was swollen and swaying in the wind. His eyes were as prominent as a goldfish's. Saliva had flowed down his open, screaming mouth and frozen into ice on his snout and fur. I was frightened, so I rushed back into the house and closed the door. I couldn't sleep afterward. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still see that face. I can't believe that was my father. As she finished her description of the horrible situation, Elena collapsed on the sofa with her hands covering her face. At this time, the detective smelled something fishy in her testimony. After thorough thought of her testimony, the detective found the irreconcilable contradiction between the testimony and the evidence. Which evidence contradicts Elena's testimony? They're gonna call me so stupid. Footprints! Oh, give me some details. The paradox is, no other footprints on the scene. Elena will destroy footprints. Well, I would think it'd be this, but I don't know. It was said earlier that only one series of footprints of the site reached the gate of the mill. Since Elena had gone out, she would have certainly left her footprints as well. Although I don't know how she did it, Elena must have concealed something. As for the reason, we can only go on with the inquiry. The detective tidied his sleeves and carefully pointed out the errors in Elena's testimony. As I recall, Miss Elena, you just said you went out to check outside? Big brain. Yeah, it works sometimes. It works sometimes. Yes? Then why is there only one set of footprints from the outside of the house to the gate of the mill? Well, I must be so scared that my memory's confused. Let me start over. The testimony of Elena 1 corrected. How do you correct it? Yesterday after dinner, my father went to the tavern as usual. I went upstairs for Hans to chat. 2 hours passed by, and there was no sign from my father's return. I went downstairs around 11 and found that he had not come back. I opened the door and my father's distorted head appeared as the body swung outside. I was so scared that I ran back to the house and closed the door. The scene was so frightening that my memory was confused. That night, every time I closed my eyes, that horrible face would pop up. I couldn't sleep at all. As long as a lie is told, more lies are bound to be used to cover it up. It's a pity that even the most talented folk can't make up every lie perfectly, let alone under such pressure. Miss Elena, there's really no need to hide anything from me. Even the detective saw through the lies she made up this time. Testimony 2 added to the clue. Which evidence contradicts her testimony? Probably not. It's the position of the body. How could Elena see his head in the door if the miller's paws were even with the windmill's blades? Elena saw what she should not have seen, only because she was actually out there and cleaning up her footprints when she came back? Not to mention cleaning up her footprints is suspicious. Why would you need to clean up your footprints if you're just a witness? Perhaps she panicked and did something that could implicate herself accidentally, or the whole scene she described was just some sort of delusion? That could be true. As you said, you saw the face of the deceased in the door, which is definitely possible for you with the current position of the body. Corpses don't simply move after death, do they? How could... I don't even know! Elena screamed hysterically and ran out of the living room. It seemed that he couldn't get near her for a while. So the detective went upstairs to visit another witness, Hans. Big brain strikes again. It took a couple tries, but yeah. They are a bit tricky, though. For me, anyway. So the detective went upstairs to visit another witness, Hans. The detective saw Hans upstairs. He was wearing a soft hat, a burlap jacket, and brown linen trousers. The dark gray eyes under the brim made the detective uncomfortable for some reason. That kind of look reminded him of a colleague he met in another case several years before. A wolf with beautiful blue eyes that had an unruly and wild gaze. Don't push it, you! Calm down, man. As I started to get up, I was pressed back to my seat by Sarzen's thick claws. He's still so sensitive about conflict between customers. 5 years ago, someone made the mistake of starting a fight in his tavern. He grabbed the guy with only one paw and threw him across the street. Somehow this attracted more customers. I still don't know what they're thinking. Are they all masochists? And the detective noticed that the hair on his paws seemed to be darker than elsewhere. The detective's face remained unchanged. He lowered his hat to cover his spying eyes. Mr. Hans, hope you don't mind. I'm just doing my job. The detective sat in the wooden chair opposite of Hans and handed his cane to the servant beside him. I would like to hear about what happened last night. So straightforward, Mr. Detective. Well, I sure will try my best. The testimony of Hans. Yesterday after dinner, like every ordinary night, the miller went to the pub to pass the time. Elena and I stayed in the mill to watch the house. We stayed in the room until 11 o'clock, then found out that the miller didn't come back at his usual time. Elena went downstairs to check while I hurried back to my room. It wasn't long before I heard Elena screaming downstairs and the sound of the door being slammed. I went downstairs and saw Elena, pale and slumped on the ground. I took her back to the room. She told me off and on about what she saw outside the door. I stayed at her bedside all night to keep her company. Okay, just one question. Is there anything suspicious? Alibi, room, no moving around, or bang. What's suspicious? Room? I don't think the room's suspicious. I'm trying to think what it is compared to hers. Doesn't seem that much different. Could Elena really be capable of slamming the door so hard? Even the weakest woman can produce explosive strength when under the influence of extreme emotions. Like the last time you requested a fighting guest get out of the pub. Oh, that was me being calm, but you're welcome to try me if you don't believe it. I'm a bit out of practice, but it wouldn't be difficult to throw you both out with you in one hand and Anzox in the other. What did I do wrong? Well, it clearly wasn't that option. Okay. Is it true that they didn't walk like they said? Not only is this suspicious, but also their previous alibi. Supposing that they collude with each other to commit a crime, it's necessary for them to prove each other's absence. I guess it's this one. Their testimony is contradictory about their room. Obviously, the wording seems to be a little subtle. What about it? Great. Different testimony, different rooms. Well, I don't know. Are they different rooms? I don't know. Elena says she went to Hans' room to chat with him, and Hans' testimony just now seems to mention that he went back to my room. It may not be the same room. It seems like one of them forgot to prepare the prepared testimony in haste. Mr. Hans, I have a small question. It has nothing to do with the case, and more with me being a jealous old soul faced with two young lovers. In which room do you usually date in? Well, in Elena's room. If that were the case, then Elena's testimony contradicts yours. She told me that you two were in your room as usual. Oh, really? She may just be confused by the shock. Or was she so frightened that she forgot the alibi you agreed on in advance? What are you talking about? I don't even know. Hans kept fiddling with his hands, and the fine beads of sweat moistened the short hairs on his forehead. His gray eyes avoided the detective's gaze. Oh, please excuse me, Mr. Hans. It's just my speculation after all. Okay. But I wouldn't choose a partner who gets nervous so easily if I were you. Ah, your hands shake when you're nervous. Can you even grasp the rope with those? The detective could read Hans's tense behavior like a book, and now he needed only a little physical evidence to prove his conjecture. The detective went out to the snowfield where the body had been lowered from the windmill by the servant. The miller's body was spread out in the snow so that anybody could see it. As the detective inspected the now neatly arranged corpse, typo, he couldn't help but grimace. After reprimanding the servant who had carelessly moved the body, he went to investigate it. Scene investigations. Please click the place you want to investigate on the picture to collect evidence. He kind of just looks like he's just laying there. Let's see. Well, there's something in his hands. Got stuff on his chest. It's in his hands. The detective looked at his curled up fingers and found gray fur inside his nails, which matched his own fur color. Okay, that's the same. He put on his gloves, pulled aside the miller's coat, and revealed his thick fur. He could feel the liquefying fat under the miller's skin. The miller looked quite plump, thanks to his wealthy life. Ew. Is this even related to the case? Don't add so many pointless details to the case. Who knows? Perhaps it may be relevant somehow. He found gray hairs under the miller's nails that matched the miller's own fur color, and his skin was scratched. There's the rope. The miller's ankle was tied with safety rope, cheap but reliable. The knot was a hangman's noose. And now he plans to sell us rope. I'm not a merchant! Okay. Something on his face at all? The detective looked closely at his face. He was scared by the dead miller's twisted face, even though it wasn't his first time seeing a body. The miller's wide-open eyes were growing cloudy and lifeless. His wrinkles were getting clearer due to his stiff facial muscles. His mouth stayed shut, but silent fear still escaped from it. He had been greatly frightened. The miller's fur remained fluffy, with no sign of strange marks. He got up and finished the search. Now he knew what had happened. And now let's put the pieces back together. Oh boy. Wait, there's still a lot of questions to be solved. Didn't you take notes for the evidence? Take a good look. It seems that the main problems with this case lie in the cause of the miller's death, the weapon that killed him, whether he was murdered, and the killer's motive. The process of how the case happened is also noteworthy. If it's impossible to confirm the sequence of events, we should focus on the factors that change with time, such as weather. Quick Q&A. Please click on the mobile icon to answer questions. Why are we playing roulette? Weapon. What's your opinion on the murder weapon? What's the murder weapon? Shock? Because there was no stab wound. Maybe it was an invisible weapon. Interesting. How about murdering him with a shock that was caused by the sudden drop? Not everyone would be so easily scared as you are. What the heck did I just do? But anyone would be shocked if they were hung without any preparation, let alone a drunk overnight miller. Indeed, I suppose a sudden death would be impossible because of those external factors. Seems like this time the detail wasn't just to add dramatic flair. Of course, every detail is necessary. So why did you take nearly half an hour to describe the suspects? Shh. Well, I guess that's the end of the discussion? Modus operandi. What's the process of crime? Deductive reasoning. Arrange the occurrences chronologically from top to bottom by dragging chips to each position. Oh boy. Now I just need the I know, right? Okay. I'm just gonna cheese it. This is so weird though. Left a circular mark. Rope hitched to the ankle. Lifted into the air. Success burned down the wooden wedge. So I just need the first part. Seems right. Luck may have been a component, but it's not impossible. That story did not fully make sense to me, though. Alright, anyway. Motive. What's the motive? Let's talk about the motive, then. First of all, we have already established that the miller got along well with villagers. So what could be... What could... So what could the motivate for murder be? Yeah, something seemed to miss. Exactly, I was kind of like... I'm missing something here. Like, this seems a weird order. I guess maybe one of them was up high and dropped the basket down, and the other one tied it to the ankle, and then they lifted him up. Maybe that's what it is. Well, what's the motivate for murder? What's the possible motive? Personal grudge, money relations, family conflict, daughter's relationship. The relationship, then? That's the only thing I can think of. The miller wouldn't allow the relationship between his daughter and the apprentice. You mean someone murdered him so the pair could be together? It's unnecessary to kill him just because of a disagreement, though. So that means something recently happened to provoke the culprit into killing the miller quickly. And the identity of the criminal is obvious. Even so, there's no need to kill him. Suspect. Who is the culprit? I think it's obvious now. The criminal is... Who's the criminal? Well... I mean, if I had to guess, it'd probably be both of them. It was both of them. Yep, they share the common benefit, and the operation of the trap needs cooperation. Done. Then the whole picture of this case is crystal clear. Not really, but okay. How come you're so excited since you aren't the one who solves the puzzles? I'm just excited to see you work, okay? So the whole story of the case is... The miller was a nice guy, but he was particularly picky about his daughter's relationships, especially her relationship with his apprentice. But even he couldn't stop their love from blossoming. The two young people seized every moment they could to be together. And the situation had been going on for a while. As eager as they were to be open with their relationship, they couldn't bear the miller's denial of their love any longer. All of a sudden, the miller made an important decision. That is... The miller agreed to their marriage. The miller betrothed his daughter. Oh, I have to click on something. Okay. The miller had picked out a satisfactory candidate among his daughter's suitors and announced his decision to her. The miller thought he had arranged a good marriage. Naturally, his special generosity made his acquaintances at the tavern extremely enthusiastic. Nice art style. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Like a comic book. Which is why they decided to kill the miller that night. The lovers were supposed to escape that night after they finished the deed, but the heavy snow and another accident forced them to change their plan. After the miller went down, Hans tied a noose with the safety rope and lowered it down from the third floor maintenance gondola. By the way, the noose is the method used to hang murderers. Their original plan might have been for Elena to meet the miller in the first floor, put the knot hanging from the windmill around his neck. Then Elena send a signal to Hans. Oh, the grammar. And let him pull up the rope and hang the miller. But even the calmest people may make a costly mistake when they kill for the first time. At about 10 o'clock, Hans, whose hands shook when he got nervous, lost his grip on the rope and dropped the knot in the snow, leaving the circular imprint. Elena, who had just opened the door and was ready to greet her father, saw the noose fall to the ground. She probably warned Hans to take it back, but the miller was already close by then. It would attract the miller's attention if the rope was pulled back up. The murder attempt should have failed by that point, but by sheer coincidence, the miller took a wrong step and changed the whole thing. Miller stepped into the ring. Elena trapped the miller with the ring. Elena rushed over to pick up the rope and forced it on the miller's ankle. Are you serious? How's that possible? With the possibility of the miller stepping into the noose. More likely that Elena picked up the rope and slipped it around his ankle without leaving her footprints in the snow. Fine, moving on. At that time, Hans had just grasped the rope outside the maintenance gondola. When the miller's paw moved toward the snow, the rope was pulled. Hans felt the pull and instinctively pulled up the rope according to the original plan, pulling the miller up by his ankle. The miller fell on the snow before he was pulled into the air, leaving the messy marks in front of his footprints as he struggled. Hans hung the miller in the air, dared not to let go of the rope, and let him struggle in the air. After a while of struggling and cursing, the face of the miller changed from red to purple. And as more and more blood rushed to his head, his movements became weaker and weaker until they stopped. Elena and Hans wanted to escape after this comedy of success, but finally decided to disguise the scene as if the miller had accidentally died and planned their testimonies. After all, as long as they could get rid of the suspicion of murder, they could inherit the mill. The reward for taking such a risk was extremely good. Hans tied the safety rope to the maintenance gondola, pretending that the miller had tied the rope himself. However, it had snowed by that time. The rope tied to the fence pushed the snow off. Therefore, there was no snow on the right side. He also stuck a wooden wedge to the windmill gear and made the windmill stop spinning. As the distant villagers saw the windmill stop, they would naturally think that the miller accidentally fell and died while repairing the windmill. The morning the detective arrived was sunny and windless. The windmill wouldn't spin even without the wooden wedge stuck in. This was his chance to throw the wedge into the bread stove and destroy the evidence. Then all he needed to do was just go back to the room and wait until dawn. If you don't look closely at the scene, you would think the miller died by accident. A coincidental murder with a crime scene that could be easily disguised. It was almost a perfect crime. I suppose the detective who performed the first investigation came to the same conclusion. At least I'm better than him? At least you managed to figure it out. I'll take that as a compliment. It's late. Looks like there won't be any more customers tonight, so I'm going to close up for the night. If you need anything, please come to the third floor to find me. Tarzan gave me and Elegant the room keys, closed the cavern, and went upstairs. Then perhaps it's time for me to go upstairs. I dare not risk being locked out by Tarzan if it's too late. There are 3 beds in the attic. Tarzan usually has 2 beds for himself, so he can have enough space to stretch his limbs. The 3rd bed is usually rented at a low price to acquaintances who need accommodation on a tight budget, such as Anzox. Elegant and I sat at the same round table, staring at each other silently. Is there anything else to do tonight? Apparently there's one option. Go back to your room. I was planning to just relax, but I didn't expect to spend the whole evening solving a mystery. I may have a headache now. Me too. I want to go back to my room and rest. I finished the rest of my beer. Oh, great detective. You can really drink a lot. It's not like I'm downing liquor. It doesn't matter if I have a cup or two. I pointed to the cider that she'd only had a sip from in front of her. So are your usual methods just like that drunken style? I'm on vacation. I'm allowed to be off my game. Angry, I leaned in close and said in a low voice, "What's more, your nun costume looks out of place in a tavern and you didn't even touch your cider. If you plan to stay here, I'm afraid you'll probably scare away the target of your investigation." I see, an amateur mistake on my part. Elegant hesitated for a while, then turned to look at me. Thank you for reminding me. Ah, you're welcome. So it turned out that you really are investigating something here. I guess I'm right. You're not entirely wrong. But now it's too late to change my clothes. I think I have to think about how to play this afterwards. Elegant, who had been confident until now, seemed to become nervous as she gazed at the reflection in her mug. When you have a moment, I'd like to find some time to hear what you're actually doing here. It's late. I'm going to bed. Good night. I said goodbye to Elegant and went upstairs to my room. My room was the first on the right. Unsurprisingly, Tarzan has already cleaned the guest rooms impeccably. Maybe I was too drunk. I kicked off my boots and flopped onto the bed, almost streaming when I touched the pillow. I'm using stand power. I have no idea what that screen said. Ugh. In my dreams, I could hear a voice coming from downstairs. Sound reverberated through the empty hall as if I were lying in the cradle when I was a child, hearing my mother hum an unknown lullaby. But the tune of music had a kind of disharmony that was distinctly sinister. Sort of like when you open your eyes only to find your cradle dangling off the edge of a cliff. The strange midnight music was unsettling, like something dark and ominous was about to spring out of the shadows to grab me. Do you want to go downstairs and have a look? I guess. Let's go. Let's go downstairs and have a look. It's a little creepy, but it's not good to just ignore it. I can't sleep anyway. I climbed out of bed and took my dagger out of the inner pocket of my coat. Moving carefully with the dagger behind my back, I slowly cracked the door open. Fortunately, that cheap old bastard Tarzan didn't forget to oil the hinges. The door opened without making a loud sound. I crept bare-pawed down the stairs. Holding the handrails, I slowly descended. My foot pads gently fell on the carpet of the stairs. Fortunately, it seemed that whoever was downstairs hadn't noticed me. The music continued. There were no lanterns or candles lit downstairs. The only light came from the wavering flames of the fireplace, and my shadow danced on the wall as I went. I clenched the dagger behind my back and slipped down the last few steps. There was a familiar shadow in the chair in front of the fireplace. How do I do this? Stay still or forestall. What does that even mean? Um... Strike before they notice you. Okay. I readied my dagger and dashed forward. I figured it was him. Anzox turned around and raised his loot to block the attack. Roman, what the hell is your problem? Now my loot's... He looked back to me with a furious glare as a barely suppressed hiss of anger escaped from his throat. Hey, it's not my fault. I didn't even understand what that word meant. Sorry, I guess you spooked me. We can discuss the destruction of my livelihood in the morning. Now, if you don't mind. Anzok strode upstairs with his broken lute, muttering darkly under his breath. I don't know how he got upstairs walking like that without waking everyone in the tavern. At a loss for what to do, I tiptoed back to my room and slowly went to sleep. I felt like a clumsy pup that had just broken a vase. It's not my fault, it's the game's fault. At least that's my excuse. Day 2, 24 December, 1285. For the rest of the night, I slept comfortably and dreamlessly. The first day of my holiday. Looks like I get spend my Christmas holiday with a half-mad bard and a mysterious adventurer in a tavern in the middle of nowhere. And eat nothing but vegetarian dishes all day long. Almost get stabbed. Okay, we cool. We cool, we cool. Well, we did break his lute, so he might be mad. Truly, such extravagance would make even the Pope himself jealous. There was a thick layer of snow on the windowsill, but it was sunny outside. I held the handrail of the stairs and went down slowly. I could hear the sound of wooden cups knocking on tables from the hall, and a smell of barley spread through the fire-warmed air. Hey, I thought your lute was destroyed, dude. Sure enough, more guests came as soon as it was sunny. Finally up, eh? God, it must be nice to have a cushy smart guy job where you don't have to wake up before dawn. Oh, come on. I only get to sleep late during the holidays. I scratched my disheveled hair a few times. Giannis, why are you here so early? The dock's completely frozen. It's either be bored at home or come drinking at the tavern. He reached out and clasped hands with me, squeezing tight. What the hell? I still need that hand, you know. Maybe you should exercise more. How are you gonna... How are you gonna... How are you gonna to catch criminals if you can't even take a handshake? Giannis clapped me on the shoulder as he spoke. Easy! I'm just messing with you. So are you gonna be... Are you gonna... Okay. I'm sorry. So are you gonna to stay here during the Christmas holiday? I figured someone like you would go on a trip or something. Ah, well, I can't travel with these injuries. I think you broke something important. Hey, maybe I should put you out of your misery then. No thanks. If you pat me to death, you'll just ruin Sarzen's business. Giannis grinned and raised a hand just as Sarzen poked his head out of the kitchen. Remember, Giannis, if you keep messing around, I'll throw you out. Not everyone here is as big, buff, and tough as you, sailor. For example, Peter. Oh, it's Peter Rabbit. Hey, don't look down on me. Peter slapped his hands on the table and stood up. But it's true. I mean, I've never seen Giannis lay a finger on you. That's because he knows he can't mess with me. Really? Want to take me on, Fluffy? No, I don't want to end up losing control and breaking you in half. Psh, either do it or shut up. Well, it's not like my body's weaker than yours. Alright, there are some things that don't have to be forced. Why must different races be so different? At least everyone is the same in a legal sense. What's the use? I don't need to deal with criminals every day like you. The law is unequal, and it is my business. Besides, what else is the same in a legal sense? Booze money and room charges. Those aren't even legally mandated. That's just you being an opportunist. Speaking of opportunists, hey Kane, did you find another job yet? Well, a few days ago, the cook at this small restaurant nearby quit because of the low salary. I figured I'd go and try my luck. I mean, it's a long shot given how many times I've been canned in the past. Maybe try to get a hold of your temper. No one will dare to hire you if you have another attack. If you could control your temper, perhaps Sarzan would hire you as an kitchen assistant in the busy season. I know. I know. It's like you kind of like automatically correct it like yourself. Like, and then I'm like, no, that's not what that says. Ah, it just sounds so wrong. Look, if keeping my temper was as easy as you said, then I wouldn't have gotten kicked out of so many. It's okay. Nobody in this world is perfect. I'd better comfort him a bit, or he'll just end up blowing up later. I just want everything to go smoothly this time. Kane started to drink alone. It seems that everyone hasn't changed much. It's the same as last year when I couldn't get a case and spend a lot of time in taverns. Ah, the good old days. Sure, being broke and staring at an empty wallet hurt, but in the company of my friends, life didn't seem to be so sad. What should I do now? The hell is this map? Oh, it's just of the tavern. Can I get out of this? I guess not. I'll go to the restroom and comb my hair. I wet my hands, posed for a better angle, and combed my hair carefully in the mirror. Falling gray hairs fluttered down like snow from my scalp, eventually landing in the wash basin. Shedding season had already passed, obviously. Even those failing hairs had regrown in the winter. Maybe I should take care of myself better the next time I get busy. The last thing I need to do is look terrible in front of clients. Kitchen? I raised the board that separated the counter and hall and squeezed through the narrow passage. Sometimes I wonder how Tarzan can cram himself into such a small space. I poked my head through the curtain. Tarzan was washing the dishes, but stopped and turned to me. Talk? What's the matter, Roman? Elegant is still staying here, right? I wonder which room is hers. Third room to the right. Thanks. I'm a bit thirsty after chatting all morning. Mind if I help myself to some ale? Okay, just remember to turn off the tap. I took out a mug from under the counter and slipped into the cellar. After filling my mug, I took a sip and considered my next course of action. Ah, ale, the lubricant of both minds and tongues. I raised the board that separated the counter and hall and squeezed through the narrow passage. Is that it? Okay, that's it. Let's go upstairs. There's a corridor, there's an attic. My room and Elegant's room. I knocked on the door of the third room on the right. Who is it? It's me, Roman. Is there something the matter? No, that's not what I want to do. Purpose of disguising. Are you there? Hey, are you there? I just wanted to ask a quick question. Huh? Elegant opened the door and stood there, looking at me expectantly. Her hand didn't leave the doorknob. I wanted to know why you dressed like that, I asked in a low voice. Do you wonder about the reason which I dress like this, or are you questioning the motive? Why not both? Elegant stepped away a bit, leaving enough room for me to squeeze through the door sideways. Not sure if I should try. Her body language and expression suggested she wasn't looking for company. Would you rather... Would you... Oh, I did that. Would you rather stand at my door and speak? You are aware of the recent arrivals downstairs, are you not? She moved back again further. I slipped into the room and she shut the door behind me. There are regulars here, decent people. You don't need to be worried about them. They may be decent individuals in this place, but that doesn't not mean they are so outside of it. You have already seen through my disguise, so I feel no need to hide. The same cannot be said of them. As of this moment, the only ones I trust are Sarzin and you. Ah, I didn't realize I was included. It's an honor. I just do not consider you to be a threat. There is no great reason why I'm here. I got a big job in the last tavern. I don't suppose you'd be willing to share next time. Only if you accept a 90-10 split for the fee. Do I get the 90? Elegant cleared her throat and continued. Are you familiar with the Cathedral of St. Isaac? What's that? A cathedral under the Rimph Diocese, currently under construction in the capital. 12 years ago, there was a disaster when one of the central pillars collapsed. The noble brothers who were supervising the construction site, the elder is called Brando Oops. Oh well. According to reports from one of the junior clergy of the local abbot, the collapse was caused by the brothers who had lined their pockets by using substandard materials and cheating the workers. So the story proved to be the perfect tool to persuade others to donate. After all, everyone fears the punishment of God. People are willing to give up anything so long as they avoid the flames of hell. According to reports of one of the junior clergy of the local abbot, the collapse was caused by the brothers, who had lined their pockets by using substandard materials and cheating the workers. So I'm guessing you were hired to investigate further? Yes, now that I have settled in, I plan to insinuate myself into the cathedral. Your client didn't tell you to come to the White Star, did they? Of course, travelers and mercenaries tend to stop in at taverns such as these as they travel. You know as well as I that the tavern rumor mill is awash with contacts and ways to exchange information. But why spend so much money investigating a closed case about something involving the church? That is neither my problem nor my concern. Take the job, perform the job, take the payment. Anything else is immaterial. I do not concern myself with any secrets my clients may have. Man, she is kind of like a cat. Elegant turned and opened the door. It seemed that she was counting my questions as immaterial as well. Elegant turned and looked back at me, waiting silently. Well, sorry to bother you. I left quickly and sensibly. The door shut behind me with a click. Corridor, my room. What's going on with my room? Better return to my room and do something else. There's what? Search what? Oh no, that's it. Corridor. There's no one in the corridor. Then why did you have that as an option? Attic. God damn it. The attic was Sarzin's room, though Anzox was also living there temporarily. There weren't any stairs between the third floor and the attic, only a ladder that went up and down. The ladder was usually pulled up into the attic, but you could use the rope connected to the top of the ladder by a pulley to bring it down. The rope, which was set between the second and third room on the left, dangled loosely. The ladder would drop down if someone pulled on the rope in order to get upstairs. I really shouldn't enter Sarzin's room without permission. Let's continue to chat in the lobby. Ah, it's nearly lunchtime. Go have lunch or chat some more. I want to have lunch. It smells like vegetable stew. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that Cain decided to bust into my kitchen and, quote, show you idiots what actual vegetable stew is like. Luckily for you guys, he cooked the stew before I managed to hurl him out onto the street. Bad news is today's lunch is vegetable stew. You don't have any smoked fish? Sorry, you ate the last of it yesterday. Anyway, bon appetit! I stirred the stew with my spoon, and the thick soup swirled slowly in the bowl. Giannis was holding the bowl to his face and dumped the liquid into his open maw. That really can't be a healthy way to eat anything. Cain ate his masterpiece contentedly, without any hesitation, while glancing at me secretly from time to time. I lowered my head immediately and had a few bites. It's nice to relax by the fire in the afternoon. The snow was falling again outside, so Sarzan needed to sweep the snowflakes which were blown from the doorway. Soft snow heaped on the street and muffled all sound, like when you block up your ears with soft cotton. Everything bad or unpleasant, from outside disputes to bad ideas, is muffled by the snow. The slightly sweet scent of fresh air, chilled by the winter cold, lingers in the nose. The wind, heavy with floating snow, tapped the wooden door enough that a band of sunlight could shine through the gap and across the wall. Suddenly, the door swung open. Oh, it's a little dragon. Hi, it's so cold. Can I get something to warm me up? A fluffy white-furred dragon staggered in, dragging a suitcase that was almost as big as he was and leaning on a cane. What's a child doing out in the snow like this? Well, hurry up, boy. Come in and have a rest. Don't call me a boy. Would a child be carrying this? He produced a medical license from his pocket and brandished it up as at Sarzan like a dagger. Sarzan frowned as he read it. Oh, my apologies, Master Doctor. Please forgive my rudeness. The last thing I need is to freeze to death before I get back to my clinic. I'll just be waiting for the snow to calm down. Of course, please warm yourself by the fire. I'll carry your things. Sarzan tried to lift the suitcase, then let out a labored groan as he shifted it. What in God's name? So heavy. The dragon took off his thick, heavy coat, climbed onto the chair opposite me, and reclined with a sigh of full contentment. Greetings. I'm Thrivy, a physician by trade. He rose slightly and stretched out his right hand. I returned the handshake. Roman, it's a pleasure. Maybe I'll be your patient in the future. His lips convulsed lightly. I hope that day never comes. His hands were covered with soft white fur from the palm to the back of his hands. The stray snowflakes which he brought from the outside were melting on his fur. He looked like he'd fit right in with some of Sarzan's paintings. Now then, where in the blazes am I? I never passed by here. The only reason I managed to spot this place was the lamp outside. This is the White Star Tavern. The White Dragon looked at me with confusion. The Vela District. Vela District? My word! Well, I hadn't expected to get quite so lost. He shrugged his shoulders and looked around. Just then, the door shook violently and gave the blizzard access to the inside of the room. The falling snowflakes flew up and down with the invading storm. At the same time, someone cursed loudly in the cellar. Mind your language, there's a child. Oh, fuck off, I'm not a child. Rude. The gale howled outside. The gale howled outside. If someone were to go out now, he'd be mad or suicidal. Normally, shutting the door was an easy task, but became much harder than usual in this situation. The snow from the crack whirled across my nose and eyes. I shut the door with all my strength and found a chair to block it up. Phew! As I moved to sit back down, the door hinges creaked loudly as someone rattled the knob. What the? That's a hyena. Oh, hell. There was a hyena lying there, wrapped tightly in a thin, hooded robe. This is a tavern. Please, I humbly ask for shelter and a warm hearth. May I stay? He crawled to his feet in embarrassment as I shrugged as an answer and pointed to the cellar, just as another crash echoed from within. I'm not the boss. I can't call the shots. Perhaps the owner will show kindness and not hurl me into the street. He took off his robe on the back of a chair, then kicked back and leaned heavily. The partially suspended chair groaned under the pressure. Sorry to keep you waiting. Going so soon, Doctor? Sarzan stood in the doorway to the cellar with mugs of ale in his hands as Thrivy was getting up from the chair. I'm not feeling well and want to find a place to rest. Do you have any available rooms? How strange. Thrivy looks just fine seconds ago, but now he looks pale and weak. Let me think. I haven't cleaned the other rooms yet. Otherwise, I can offer the space I have in the attic. Thrivy walked to the stores quickly, politely refusing to cup the cup Sarzan offered. Thank you, but I'm a little queasy at the moment. My stomach is a bit too delicate for alcohol. Well, no need to waste such fine ale. Tarzan stared in surprise as the hyena plucked the mug from his hand without any hesitation and intended to drink. Oh, hold on! You're a friar, aren't you? Perhaps he's also a pretender like Elegant. Don't bother with such rigid rules. Ah, 'tis far nobler to not waste the gifts granted by God. Well, how should I address you? Sarzan crossed out a whole line on the bill with his pencil, then added a few words. It seems like you don't go to church on weekends, or you'd know my name. I would go, but seeing as I'm the only one working at this tavern, I don't have much chance. Excuse me. That's how some children talk anyway. With a slight frown, Sarzan turned back and quickly retreated into the kitchen. I suppose that he would stay there for a long time. Oh, I just remembered I have something important to do. Goodbye. What else is more important than rescuing your soul, my child? Come now, stay. Oh no, you're one of those. At the moment I touched the stair railing, the hyena had pinned my hand with a smile. The blink of the cross, which hung on his chest, was dazzling. Well, so much for escaping. What's your name? I believe I've never seen your face before in my church. I'm not in this parish. That doesn't matter. Even though we are from different parishes, all of us are in the same family. I'm Father Heron. Nice to meet you. I stretched out 3 fingers and gingerly shook his hand. I'm Roman. Nice to... He interrupted me before I could get a word in edgewise and began to make a speech without any pause, gesturing towards me excitedly. Tell me, child, do you know where we will go after death? I'm sure you never think about that. How to settle your audiences to sleep. Step 1. Ask a question and answer it yourself. He let go of my hand and I quickly climbed the stairs. Thrivy was standing in the corridor and staring blankly up the ceiling. Surely there's some way to... Here, leave it to me. I went ahead and untied the knot step by step. This white dragon watched as I untied the strings from the wooden handle quietly beside me. Okay, I got it. Next step is just... Let loose directly. Release the rope slowly. I put the ropes down step by step. The ladder dropped slowly with a squeak from pulleys. Finally, the ladder descended between us. Ah, so that's the trick. Thank you. It seems like you are familiar with this place. I am a regular customer, so I know a few things about this place. The white dragon caught hold of the handrail of the ladder and tried his best to climb up the very steep steps. The spacing of the ladder's rungs was suitable for someone of Tarzan's size, so it was a little large for him. The nightstand was half opened. I moved quickly, pulling open the drawer and began searching. My wallet was still there, as were my magnifying glasses in their fleece bag. The evidence case from the crime scene. I rummaged through the sundries I had stored in there, my hand dipping down into the drawer. Finally, my finger touched a cold and hard object buried deep among the linens. There it is. I tucked the case back down deep underneath my things and stuffed everything back in the drawer. I quietly cursed the lack of a lock. The cheap bastard Sarzan must have thought nobody would bother to rob his guests. Imagine that. Nothing was lost, but I know I didn't leave the drawer open. Think, who had access to my room after lunch? Only 2 can be excluded. Who didn't have the chance to enter my room after lunch? Let's see. I don't know. Yeah. Who's Heron? I don't even remember who that is. No. Tarzan manages everything all the time downstairs. He didn't have time to go upstairs until now, excluded. But Thrivey, it's not impossible to enter my room before I came in. On the contrary, Heron, who'd been chattering without a stop in front of me after he arrived, didn't do it. As for everyone else, I'll need to investigate. I locked the door and went downstairs. Well, what else would you like to order? That's enough. Thank you for the warm hospitality, good sir. The lynx who'd just come in swept off his thick coat and casually dropped it into Heron's arms as he walked past. What are you doing? Child, I'm not a coat rack. Tarzan took the coat from Heron's hands and quickly hung it from the progressively more overburdened coat rack. That is a weird sentence. Heron let out an offended huff, then walked over to the fireplace and sat down, the fur in his back raised, and hackled. The lynx walked towards me as he adjusted his collar, meeting me at the bottom of the stairs. Hello there. Just call me Vincel. He reached into the pocket of his fancy, puffy-sleeved topcoat and produced something with a flourish. It was a scroll about the size of a finger, with smooth-edged paper wrapped around a varnished wooden core. Vincel Link, Spices and Herbs, Napoleon. That explained a few things. This guy smelled of money. I'm Roman, the detective that... Splendid, Mr. Roman. Might I take your contact details later? I may have some need for a detective in the future. Well, if you want to. I tucked the scroll into my pocket and wiped the sweat on my hand on the suit. I can provide you with my address once you're settled in. I stepped out of the way so Vincel could trot upstairs. Tarzan followed him with his luggage. People nowadays! Heron was muttering to himself as he turned to me. I believe you said something about thorns on the road to salvation earlier, Father. You? Heron's words stuck in his throat at the sight of Tarzan coming downstairs. I'll prepare dinner. Feel free to chat. Tarzan lifted the curtain and went into the kitchen, leaving me and Heron in the room together alone. I quickly moved, reaching for the easiest excuse to get away from the hyena before he pounced. I'm going to leave an address for him. We can talk later. I rushed to the stairs before he could object. Vincel stood at the door to his room. I don't suppose it's a coincidence that your room is right next to mine, Mr. Vincel. I thought you'd be staying in the suite at the end of the corridor. The rooms are all the same, my good wolf. It's not as if I have much in the way of luggage. He stepped over to the doorway and leaned on it, motioning me over with a constant, mild smile. Here you are, just right here. I accepted the sharpened quill and jotted down the address of my office on the paper he gave me. Though I called it my office, it was just the parlor of the flat that I rented. If a client came without a reservation, they'd be shocked by the casual atmosphere there. I didn't always have the time or energy to sweep or clean up after myself. It cost me more than one client's business. He tucked the paper into the pocket where he put the scroll, then gave me a finger wave goodbye. Funny, I had expected something more like the scent of exotic spices or fancy cologne at least. Or maybe that was just me expecting something more ostentatious. It's snowing heavily out there. Kane tightened the lock and dusted off his hands. You're bloody lucky it's a holiday, so I don't need to be hurry going back. Why not stay here until the snow is lighter? Just think of it as being on a case with me. Bugger off, as if anyone would accompany you. I told you not to come in when I have my door locked at night. No need to be rude. You're the one to talk. You forgot to buy my drink after that case I helped you with. Alright, okay, I'll treat you soon. What's your poison? Ale? Wine? Of course it's ale. Who's gonna treat someone to some ale? Giannis emerged from the door at the end of the corridor. Are you up to your gills and coins? How come you can pay for the corner suite? Hey, you only pay if you stay the night. That explains it. We walked downstairs one by one. I told you not to come to the kitchen. I'm busy. Tarzan was leaning out of the kitchen with a stern glare. But my child, isn't the redemption of the soul more... Last I checked, you can't feed customers with redemption. Now stay out! I'm pretty sure you can't just command piety. I took the seat beside Hera and he scooted over to give me some room. Maybe you should just take it easy for the night. I haven't done my endeavor. If I haven't converted everyone. Everyone here is a pious believer. If that were true, if that were true, you'd be in the pews at Sunday service. I would, just as soon as criminals stop committing crimes on Sunday. Crime is merely a synonym of moral wickedness. If more people prayed... Last I checked, Father Heron, praying doesn't solve everything. Indeed, for worldly matters we must rely on the beneficence of worldly assistance. Unnoticed, Elegant had already come downstairs and claimed a seat across the table from Heron. Even the most righteous may fall into inequity and ruin if they casually mingle with those steeped in sin. Then perhaps you should worry more about your own righteousness? After all, you only risk further degeneration if you casually mingle with us sinners. You! Want some supper to go along with your moral philosophy? Tarzan slapped 2 bowls of carrot stew in front of me and Heron. The soup sloshed from the bowl and landed on the table. Bon appetit! When he served the stew to Vincel, it was refused by a hasty wave of the hand, so he served the stew to Elegant. Perhaps I've been a bit prickly. You're not the only one. Bon appetit! Do you really have to imitate him? It began to grow dark. Snow piled on windowsills and in front of the door, and the pavement had all but vanished. Ansuk strummed in snatches of melody in his corner. Just like every bard stuck in an inn by heavy snow. Looks like we have to stay overnight. Do I got time to change to a smaller room so I can save some money for ale? Maybe go without ale for the night. Do you know 2 places without ale? Jail and hell. That's why I come to the tavern. It's the furthest place from both. Giannis took the seat at the bar and moved to scratch the countertop. The change is okay. In this kind of weather, every guest counts. Tarzan slid a mug to Giannis across the counter. Drink up, but scratch my bar and I'll take it out of your hide. Knock. Hello? A muffled voice came from behind the door. Knock, knock, knock. Hello, is anyone in there? Continual knocks come through the snow-buried door, attracting everyone's attention. The snow was piled up as high as my hips. Who would be knocking at this time of night? Everyone kept silent. Giannis moved in front of the candle to hide it. Please, our carriage is stuck in the snow. How many of you are there? Tarzan opened the partition and squeezed himself out from behind the counter. He kept his left hand concealed in his coat. 3, please, we have money. We just want somewhere we can pass the night. I can see only 1. Tarzan grimaced, then cracked the door open to peek out. My master and mistress are still in the carriage. Come on in, then. Tarzan pushed the snow door wide. Ugh. Tarzan pushed the door wider, allowing a thin figure to stagger inside with a gust of snow. Oh, it's a goat. Thank God, the wheels were stuck in the snow and our horses panicked and broke their legs. If we hadn't seen the light of the tavern, I don't know what we would have done. Thank me later. I'll go rescue the other two. I'll give you a hand. Tarzan and Giannis took their coats and went out the door, though Giannis's coat didn't seem to fit him well. Phew, is there any way I can warm myself? The goat patted the snow off his coat and shuffled over to the fireplace. I'm surprised you made it this far with the way you're shivering. It's too cold for being near the capital. Ridiculous. By the way, my name is Sean. I am Roman. Nice to meet you. I didn't feel comfortable shaking the hand of someone trembling so hard. Luckily, he seemed more focused on warming his hands by the fire. The door swung open heavily as Tarzan guided two people wrapped with thick cloaks inside. He left them by the fireplace to pour ale for them. Here you are. Drink it to warm yourselves. Giannis carried the luggage in and returned his overly tight coat back to the coat rack, which I then noticed was actually my coat. Jerk. I'll admit, I doubt my place will meet your usual standards. Any port in a storm, as they say. Merci beaucoup. Just take it easy. I will try to accommodate you as best I can. May I know your names, please? Lunik, Marquis Lunik Harlock, and this is my wife, Solar. A gray-furred wolf emerged from underneath the cloak. Snow clung to his messy but glossy fur, and his amber-orange eyes landed on me. I wonder if you remember me. Oui, certainly. You're the detective who resolved a crucial case for us, monsieur. Roman. Oh yes, Roman, pardon. It had almost slipped out of my memory. He turned back to take off his wife's cloak before handing both to his servant Goat. Sean caught the two cloaks and stood aside like a living coat rack. I guess nobles have short memories. Your room is ready. It's not exactly a suite in the capital, but it's clean and tidy. No need to mention, they must be staying in the double suite at the end of the corridor. You're gonna sing me to sleep now. Thank you. I simply must get out of these shoes. Sean, I think the glue of my heels came loose from the snow melt. Tarzan walked ahead with a suitcase in each hand and a candle held by his tail. The Marquis and the Marquise followed him up. Kane watched them go upstairs from his seat at the counter, fiddling with his pendant. Seems Kane's pendant had never been apart from him, though the color and scratches on it meant it wouldn't be worth much. Tarzan came back downstairs. Is there anyone here who doesn't have a room? Like me? Oh, forgive me, Father. Well, we have a nice big room left over. For the Marquis' servant. Heron's pout was so intense it was almost audible. As I'm sure you know, the warriors of God must keep away from worldly pleasure which weakens them. That includes staying overnight in the inn's big suite. I suppose that is indeed the case. So I think it's alright. Vincel and Threevey came downstairs one after another. Threevey walked straight to the counter, took a seat beside Kane and Giannis, and started reading a book like he was in his own little world. Before I could notice, Kane had plucked the pendant off his neck and strode upstairs. The pendant swung about, the string of it twined between his index finger and thumb. I do say, it's gotten much more lively, hasn't it? We don't usually have a packed house this late. Anyone care for a game? Tarzan took a length of blue flannel from under the counter and spread it on the table. If you have any objections to gambling, you can go upstairs and play by yourselves. Sean stood there at the table, looking longingly at the flannel before clearing his throat. I must attend to my master and mistress. Good evening. Are you just going to gawk, or are you going to join us? Oh, yes, I'm coming. I sat by the makeshift card table. Tarzan pulled out 4 cards and put them in a line. Let's have a simple game to warm up. What about guessing the suits? No problem. I picked out 4 cards with different suits. Liangle, Blade, Chalice, and Garen. understand. Well, I didn't get it for sure. It's okay, you'll figure it out after you lose a few times. You're a terrible teacher. First, guess which one is the Liangle? 1 to 4. I mean, it was there, but has it moved? I picked the first card. It was not the Liangle. Seems you're wrong. Now guess which one is the blade? Carrying a candle with his tail. Good use of a tail. Oh yeah, that's true. A tail would be handy, that's for sure. And now apparently I'm playing a card game. Well, this looks like it's just luck, honestly. Nah. I picked the fourth card. It was not the blade. You suck. Seems you're wrong. After 2 rounds, my petty cash had run dry. Bad luck. Well, whatever. It was luck anyway. Aaron concentrated his attention on watching the gambling. Even I couldn't tell if he was watching critically or just to enjoy. Let me refill my wallet when it's time for a showdown. Fleeing to lick your wounds, detective? Gloat all you like, Anzox. I'll be back to clean you out. Oh? Poor luck? Elegant was at the stairs. She raised her veil and smirked at me. What do you want? If it's not important, I've got a card game waiting for me. It is. And it is an important matter. She stepped back to the wall and backed away to the door of her room and opened the door. Is the mysterious act necessary? Very necessary. She shut the door behind me. Doing well? Are you still wearing a bell? What? Never mind. In a word... Before she could speak a whole sentence, bang! With a crunching sound. Bang! The second one. Bang! The third one echoed in the tavern with a hoarse roar. What on earth? Don't worry, I guess it's just Kane losing his temper. He'll calm down soon, then go cry and blame himself all night. Anyway, you were saying something? I doubt it will be that simple. We should check to make sure. Whatever you had to say seemed pretty important. Don't let me die of curiosity, please. Well, in a word, bang! A deep sound. The sound was different from the last. It was like something heavy. It was like something heavy fell slammed in. It was like something heavy fell slammed into the ground. Okay. Something that probably weighed as much as a person. What happened? I slammed the door open, bouncing it off the walls. Elegant followed me out. The sound had come from the opposite side of the hall. What is with this music? Kane's room. I tried the doorknob, but it was locked. I thumped, pushed, kicked with all my strength, but the door wouldn't budge. Sean ran from the double room in a hurry, a handkerchief in one hand. What happened? I think something happened to Kane is his... I think something happened to Kane is his room, but the door's locked and we can't get it. Locked? Tarzan rushed from the stairs when he heard that, trying to push through the rest of the crowded guests to fetch his keys. We can't wait! Sean backed up, bent his head down, and rushed to the door with his horn. My vision went black. The air was still. The sounds of choppy breaths and sobs slowly, gradually filled my ears. A scream sliced through the still air and echoed in my ears. My vision slowly cleared, and soon I could identify the shape of the scene before me. Ooh. A wooden cup and a copper candlestick were rested on the ground. Dull red liquid, like viscous wine, trickled down the back of the chair and pooled in the ground. The air was thick with a coppery metallic smell. Kane was slumped in the chair, like he was asleep, if you ignored the knife which was thrust into his chest. A pattern of reddish gold bloomed along the lines of the bloody... Ugh. The pattern of reddish gold bloomed along the lines of the knife handle, and splatters of red spread out across his body. Kane's body shuddered involuntarily as the last traces of life fled his corpse. Nobody moved. It was like the world had slowed to a crawl, like witnessing a terrible accident that you couldn't do anything to stop. I thought that by now I'd seen enough death and carnage to not be shaken by one more grisly murder scene, until I found myself staring at Kane's slowly stiffening corpse. The familiar odor of Kane's musk mixed with the metal smell of blood and reek of death, and caught in my throat. It says achievement unlocked sirloin, and I'm like, wow, really? Someone do something! Tarzan tried to burst into the room, but was stopped by Anzox and Sean, clinging to his sides. Why in my tavern of all places? Who did it? Which one of you did it? Tarzan roared as he shook Anzoc and Sean off. His lips pulled back to show fangs, and his shoulders hunched. His wings began to spread angrily, struggling to free themselves from the straps he held them with. The friendly innkeeper persona dropped away. In its place was an enraged dragon out of some bard's tale, furious that someone had dared defile its lair. He leveled his glare at me. Get a hold of yourself. I'm crushed that Kane's dead, and I don't know who did it. Then find out! I'll do everything I can. Thank you. It's very important for me. Tarzan slowly recovered his composure, his fangs hidden back under his lips, and his posture relaxed. I expect all guests will cooperate with Woman's investigation in order to resolve this as soon as possible. He tossed me the ring of keys, turned around, and slowly walked downstairs, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. I remember there was also another set of keys in the attic. I should have a look later. Well then, time to get to work. If you wish, Detective, I can help by checking the corpse, if you don't want to face him so soon, that is. I'd appreciate it. I'll admit I usually only treat living patients, but given the situation we now face, that's fine. I'll work while you investigate elsewhere. Return after you finish. With this, he turned back and tightened his medical gloves before going to work. My autopsy isn't quite done, Detective. I'll check someplace else. The case mainly took place at... Alright, don't miss the attic. Although not everyone can give useful testimony, asking everyone is still necessary. Your whereabouts. I just want to ask you what you were doing when Kane's incident happened. Me? I was watching them playing cards. Right. Who is the culprit? Anzox was lost in thought. I was thinking if someone used the spare key. No way. Why are you so sure? The keys are all in the key holder, and they look exactly the same. I would imagine only Tarzan can discern the differences between them. Even if the murderer had all the time in the world, he wouldn't know which key to take. Ask Tarzan if you don't believe me. Oh, you can search the rooms. Thravy's bed is one of the beds that Sarzan usually sleeps in, but he's loaned it to Thravy to sleep in for now. That's Thravy's book. The cover has the image of a dragon and some symbols that I can't quite figure out. That's Thravy's medical supply box. It's so heavy even Sarzan had difficulty lugging it around. Okay, there's 3 different places. A candle. A box. There's a bunch of old junk piled up around here. Bits of twine, decorations, angel wings for an old April Fool's costume. These must be the keys which Sarzan hangs by the bedside. If there's an empty room available with free keys, we'll hang on there. The door was locked. Were there any problems with the key? I counted them one by one. The shapes were basically the same. Seems like that they were made in the same workshop. I'll ask Sarzan about it later. Alright. Oh, I guess all the rooms are open now. Alright. Let's see, what time is it? It's almost 12. Alright. I think I might question her. Let's see. Your whereabouts. Where were you? I just wanted to ask you what you were doing when Kane's incident happened. Oh yeah, I was talking to you. I was standing in front of you. To be fair, that is true. Research her room. The sheet on the bed of the edge is untidy. The sheet on the edge of the bed is untidy. This is Elegant's luggage, well made, but unremarkable. A candle. May I have a look in your drawer? Eh? Elegant hesitated and slowly moved away from the night table. I slid the door open. There was a notebook in the drawer with her name. I looked at her and she responded a shrug. I'm not about to obstruct your investigation, detective. I opened the notebook. 13 familiar names were written on the paper. Kane, Giannis, Tsarin, and Anzok's names are crossed out. Ugh. Ugh. Alright, so it's almost midnight here. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and call this stream for tonight.